All right. I think I've done it. I think we're live. I'm gonna tweet this out real quick for I forget because I will. All right. I don't see anyone yet. Great. Okay. I've had confirmation. We're good to go. So, this is a new format for me, I suppose. I've done live streams before, but this is my first one with slides. So, I'm looking forward to doing that. Of course, today I want to talk about Donald Trump and what he said at the Libertarian Convention Party fundraiser, whatever it is. So, let's see. I need to share my screen. Let's see. Oh, come on. Come on. Okay, I need to, I see. Add all this out, I guess. All right. Okay, I think I'm good now. So, like I was just saying, obviously the news of Donald Trump mentioning Bitcoin pretty explicitly in a campaign rally for a libertarian crowd, as well as mentioning CBDCs, Ross Ulbricht, and everything there. So, in this video today, I've got some slides breaking down what exactly he said, if you haven't seen that yet, as well as what I think this is really important for the long-term future of Bitcoin. So, let's see if I can get my slides up this time. Here we go. So this is, as a promise of today's video, I got some clips of Jason and Lowery as well as Saifedean up and ready to go to discuss why this is important. Obviously, Jason and Lowery is the front-runner Bitcoin advocate in the U.S. Space Force. And then, of course, Saifedean is an economist, and he has spoken extensively about this too. And he has some comments today about this. So first of all, please subscribe if you haven't yet. Since we're early in the live stream, probably everyone watching has. This is a new format for me. I'm trying this out. I haven't really done news-related stuff before, but I'm doing my best at it, and hopefully not just to cover the news, but also give a longer-term, lower time horizon of what's going on. So we have to talk about what did Donald Trump say? What exactly did he say? Well, I have a clip here of exactly what he said. Again, this was regarding Bitcoin. This was regarding self-custody Bitcoin and freeing Ross Ulbricht and banning CBDCs. So I'm not going to put words in his mouth. We're just going to watch a quick clip of what exactly he has said, and then I'll add some commentary to it as well as context. Oops.
I will commend of Ross Ulbricht to a sentence of time served. He's already served 11 years. We're going to get him home. We're going to get him home. I'm proud that I have put forward a detailed plan to smash the censorship and industrial complex and restore free speech. On day one, I will sign an executive order banning federal agencies from colluding to censor the lawful speech of American citizens. And we will remove the rogue bureaucrats who conspire to take away your First Amendment freedoms. We will do that quickly. I will once again slash a record number of liberty-destroying regulations. I will stop Joe Biden's plan for the largest tax. He is going to give you the largest tax increase in the history of our country. And I will end that. And I will make the Trump tax cuts the biggest in the history of our country. We will make them permanent tax cuts. We will also stop the massive Biden inflation tax, a stealth tax by which crooked Joe Biden is printing trillions and trillions of dollars and plundering it for the cronies and political friends that he's got all over Washington. And we will cancel the Green New Deal, which is the Green New Scam. It's a big scam. We will terminate Crooked Joe's insane electric vehicle mandate. And we're going to bring your energy costs down by 60 and 70% because we will drill, baby, drill. We're going to drill, baby, drill. We will eliminate illegal government discrimination, return to a society based on individual rights and individual merit. Crypto. We're going to stop it. I will ensure that the future of crypto and the future of Bitcoin will be made in the USA, not driven overseas. I will support the right to self-custody to the nation's 50 million crypto holders. I say this with your vote. I will keep Elizabeth Warren and her goons away from your Bitcoin. And I will never allow the creation of a central bank digital currency.
Okay. So there we go. That was the clip. A few things obviously were said there that I think are quite funny. I guess for a little bit of context, when he first walked out on stage at the Libertarian convention there, he was actually booed. So I don't know if it came across in the video, but during his speech, throughout the entire thing, people were both cheering and booing. So it was a funny little juxtaposition there. His comment about 50 million crypto holders. I don't know where or what study or what research panel exactly he's referring to. Obviously, I don't think there are anywhere near 50 million crypto holders or let's say Bitcoin holders, right? As many people watching this probably know, there's not even 4 million addresses that contain 1/10 of one Bitcoin. So not even a tenth of that 50 million hold a significant amount of Bitcoin. And probably many of those wallet addresses are held by the same individuals. So 50 million crypto holders is an advantageous claim because it's probably the main reason why he's talking about Bitcoin. I don't think he actually understands Bitcoin. Obviously, I don't even think he probably owns Bitcoin. But just from the way he was speaking about it, right? Bitcoin, right? Is funny. But it's advantageous that he thinks that 50 million people own Bitcoin and are into crypto and all that because it seems like that's becoming a part of his campaign promises now. But I don't think there are really 50 million Bitcoin holders at all. So he made 3 important claims there. What I believe are 3 important claims in that speech, or 3 promises. The first one is the right to self-custody. Of course, I'll get to that. The second one is about the promise to free Ross Ulbricht on his first day in office, which of course got the Libertarian crowd all fired up. And then of course, third of all is the ban or the declaration to ban CBDC. So I'm going to go through all 3 of those really quick here. So let's see. So first of all, let's talk about Ross Ulbricht. Who is Ross Ulbricht? Many people watching this probably know. Some people don't know, though. And so for those that don't know who Ross Ulbricht is a young man who was one of the main people in charge of the Silk Road. On the picture on the right here is Ross Ulbricht and with his mom. I've never met Ross Ulbricht, obviously, because he's been in prison for 11 years. But I have met his mom. I've met his mom a couple times. Most recently was late last year. I met her, and actually there's an event coming up where her, myself, Curtis Green, and a few other people in the Silk Road Days are going to be together. So if you want to join that event, I'll be talking about that more at the end of today's video. But that's a side note. The big picture of who Ross Ulbricht is he was a first-time offender of, organizing the Silk Road, which the Silk Road was very important in the early days of Bitcoin back in 2010, 11, 12, that era, the first halving epoch or so. And a lot of people, especially in the Bitcoin, cypherpunk, and libertarian communities, view Ross Ulbricht as a kind of martyr or as a kind of unjustly prosecuted individual. The little meme on the left here comparing Sam Bankman-Fried as well as Ross Ulbricht, one can see pretty clearly the hypocrisy in Ross Ulbricht's sentencing. Ross Ulbricht has double life sentence plus 40 years without parole and a maximum security penitentiary. He does not qualify for days off sentence. He does not qualify for parole, and he has life in prison, right? And again, this is a non-violent charge, 7 non-violent charges, the same way Sam Bankman-Fried. Now, pretty controversial figure even within Bitcoin, because some people, believe the, claims that he was inciting violence against other members of the Silk Road. Obviously, there's a long rabbit hole there, which I'm not going to get into. The larger point of what I think is important here to understand is that Donald Trump clearly is hearing the Libertarian Party's cries, is clearly hearing the Bitcoiner community's cries, and the freeing or at least reevaluation of Ross Ulbricht's case is definitely a top contender there. So that's who Ross Ulbricht is. To the other members of the other Silk Road defendants, here's another meme or popularly circulated example of the hypocrisy in punishment for the different Silk Road members. Obviously, Ross Ulbricht has life. He's not really allowed to communicate with the outside world. A couple years ago at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, Ross Ulbricht was able to do a phone call with people at the conference, and the word is that he was punished severely for doing the phone call afterwards. And again, there's a long conspiracy or long number of theories as to why Ross has been so firmly silenced in the last decade or so. I'm not really going to get into those right now, but the important thing to understand is that Donald Trump's making the claim that he's going to free him, or at least, release him on his first day in office. Now, my question is, why didn't he had 4 years in office from 2016 to 2020, obviously, right? And so my question is, why didn't Donald Trump free him then? Well, I think the answer is that, probably just politics. Probably he didn't care 4 years ago because Ross Ulbricht was not enough of a case 4 years ago to be in the mainstream eye or to be in Donald Trump's perceived eye of his voters. But now that he's trying to win over the Bitcoin community, this seems like an easy thing for him to do to try and get that, right? And there is a lot of interesting connections between the people that put Ross away as well as the people that leaked Hillary Clinton's emails. And so perhaps Donald Trump's going from an angle, that perspective. However, that's just me musing. That's just me guessing. I don't have anything to back that up. So why is self-custody important? Donald Trump talks about self-custody and he promises self-custody to people. Obviously, hopefully everyone watching this understands the importance of self-custody, and if they are able to take self-custody, has taken self-custody. Self-custody is really important because nobody cares and it does not matter until suddenly it does not matter. That's this meme up here on the screen of Bitcoin price being flat until suddenly it's a vertical up spike, okay? Self-custody does not really matter. Everyone kind of forgets it. It's kind of like insurance, right? Nobody cares. Nobody likes paying for it until the day where you suddenly need it, right? Self-custody is important because the whole reason we need Bitcoin is to avoid the centralizing factors of political currency, to avoid the centralizing ability of human beings to control, manipulate, or distort the monetary supply. And so if you don't have self-custody, if you have Bitcoin on exchanges or you have Bitcoin ETF, you are inherently trusting humans again. And that's not going to be a good idea over the long term. And so with the Democrats recently approving the ETF, as well as, the Senate and the House, working on legislation in favor of Bitcoin self-custody, it seems that Donald Trump also is hearing the cry from Bitcoiners and trying to appeal to the Bitcoiners in that case, which for me is very surprising because a couple of years ago this was not a factor at all, and now all of a sudden it is. So that's why self-custody is important. However, there is a third thing that Donald Trump mentioned, and that is CBDCs. Now, is that we're actually already there. Donald Trump says we're not going to allow CBDCs, and that's great and wonderful, whatever. And, I'm grateful he's using that language and that rhetoric. I think that's important. But with all due respect to Mr. Trump, or former President Trump, we're already there in a very large way, right? Most of us watching, remember, and by most, I mean all of us watching, lived through 2020. We all remember what that was like. Remember what it was like living through, hearing about the stimulus checks, getting your stimulus checks, your PPP loans and all that. My argument is that in CBDCs, we are essentially already there. In North Korea, CBDCs are already a reality. For the millions of people in Europe that can't make transactions in cash over a certain threshold, whether that's $400, $1,000, or a couple $1,000, whatever is in their specific country, for them, a CBDC is essentially already there. Most of your dollars that you use every single day are already digital. You already can be censored. We've seen this in Canada with the trucker protest having bank accounts frozen. Like I just described, we've seen this even under Donald Trump's own former presidency, his own presidential term, his previous 4-year term in 2020. We saw this with the stimulus checks. We saw this with the PPP loans. Okay, if you did not spend your political currency units in the right amount of time, your stimulus checks went away, right? If you didn't qualify, if you didn't meet the right race, the right gender, the right age, the right marital status, the right whatever, you didn't get as much stimulus checks over the other, right? And so I'm glad that we have politicians, including Donald Trump, now talking about anti-CBDC rhetoric, but that doesn't mean I trust Donald Trump. That doesn't mean I like Donald Trump in this regard. And that doesn't mean I can't call out Donald Trump hypocrite in this regard. You can be anti-CBDC all you want, but effectively, we're already there. Canada essentially is already there. The United States essentially is already there. Our money is we already have mass surveillance. We already have money tied to our personal data. We already have our personal religion, our personal political beliefs, our skin color, ethnicity, marital status, whatever it is, factors contributing to, is your money turned on? Is it turned off? Do you get more money than someone else? When do you get your helicopter money from the state? So that's my little caveat that that was what he got the most praise for at the Libertarian Convention, was not even the self-custody or the Ross Ulbricht, but it was this. That's what people most passionately responded to. But the funny thing is that I think we're already there in many regards. And so this gets to a larger question we've been having today. All over Twitter, all over Reddit, people are asking, should we trust Trump? Should we like Trump? Should we vote to Trump? You know, we have RFK Jr., right? We have Kennedy Jr. Also running for president. He's been pro Bitcoin / pro crypto. Now we have Trump also trying to get in the running with that. Of course, the SEC turned on a dime at the last moment and approved the Ethereum ETF. Then we have other politicians like, should we trust these politicians? And my argument is no, we should not trust Donald Trump. We should not trust the politicians. We should trust game theory, though. And that's why this little chess set on the screen here, because I think it's a coincidence that Donald Trump is talking about Bitcoin right now, right? We have Vivek Ramaswamy talking about Bitcoin, 6, 12 months or so ago. He went on what Bitcoin did with Peter McCormick. We also had Kennedy talk about Bitcoin. We had Kennedy talk about perhaps backing U.S. treasuries maybe up to 1% with Bitcoin in another basket of commodities. So I don't think it's a coincidence that we saw these kind of outlier candidates like RFK, like Bitcoin. We saw a lot of support from them, even though they didn't have enough to continue their campaigns. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think Donald Trump is seeing that. And I think that is why we can be so confident in Bitcoin's future. We can be so confident and where Bitcoin's going, because Bitcoin doesn't need Donald Trump. Bitcoin doesn't need Vivek Ramaswamy. Bitcoin doesn't need Nancy Pelosi or Elizabeth Warren or the Congress or House or whomever. Bitcoin doesn't need those political institutions to survive. But by Bitcoin, by just its pure game theory and by its pure free market incentives, is incentivizing more and more politicians to care about it and to be favorable towards it as more people use it, right? As more people use Bitcoin, as more people use Coinbase, as much as I despise Coinbase, the more people use these exchanges, the more people that buy the ETFs, the more these things get regulatory clarity, the more that the politicians have to care about it. It's not an option anymore. The Bitcoin crowd and their perceptions, 50 million people. Again, I don't think it's built to 50 million people, but by their perception, there could be 50 million people that might be a voting issue. And for Trump, it's a pretty easy bet, right? A lot of people that don't like Trump already are not going to dislike him more because now he's pro-Bitcoin. And if they do, well, who cares? They already didn't like him, right? And a lot of people that like Trump already aren't going to distance themselves from him just because he aligns himself with Bitcoin. So for Trump, it's an asymmetric bet. Trump doesn't really care about Bitcoin. I don't think Trump really likes Bitcoin. And again, I don't believe there are anywhere near 50 million Bitcoiners. But from a political standpoint, it's a low downside, high upside option for him coming into an election where the margins are going to be relatively tight, right, against Biden and against Kennedy. So I think that's what's really important about understanding what we're seeing here with Trump and with these other politicians in recent weeks. Again, the House, the Senate, even Nancy Pelosi voting against her advisors and against her status quo, right? Elizabeth Warren seems to be the one politician that's really not quite getting the making the sway yet, but the case, I think that this is what we're looking at here. Now, Saifedean Ammous has talked about a $1.5 million Bitcoin today in regards to this. Someone asked, what series of events has to happen to make Bitcoin the world reserve currency, right? I'm assuming that she was asking this on the back of the Donald Trump news. And then Saifedean comments that if price needs to keep going up, or that its price keep going up, that the higher the price, the bigger the market cap, the more liquidity. The more liquidity, the more it is used as money. And the more money, okay, then that means the more it trends toward being the world reserve currency of the planet. Now, according to Saifedean, if Bitcoin is roughly $1.5 million or over, then it's bigger than the U.S. Treasury market, and that napkin math seems approximately correct to me. So, is a $1.5 million Bitcoin coming anytime soon? I don't think so. Obviously, I think the longer trend is the way more important thing to understand, that politicians are coming to understand it, not because necessarily they want to, or not even necessarily because they care about it, but because they see the direction the wind's blowing. They see that what the voters want. What do the voters want? The voters want things that 4 years ago they didn't care about. Donald Trump 4 years ago didn't care about Bitcoin. He didn't care about Ross Ulbricht 4 years ago, and he clearly doesn't care about CBDC rhetoric and having financial freedom for everyone and avoiding helicopter money to everyone. All three of those things he clearly didn't care about 4 years ago. And now, even if he still doesn't care and he's going to back out on his promises, he at least is making the attempt to pretend like he cares to the potential voter base. And so I think this gets into a larger discussion of Bitcoin from a technological standpoint. Why does Bitcoin have this game theory? Why is Bitcoin like gunpowder in this sense? Okay, this is an excellent discussion from Saifedean. I remember when this initially came out, but I think this is very related to what we're looking at today. In the same way that the internet is not really a political discussion. It doesn't matter your politics on the internet. The internet's coming and you can't ignore it. I think in many ways it's the same thing with Bitcoin. It doesn't matter if you're pro-Bitcoin, anti-Bitcoin. You either adopt Bitcoin or you become technologically irrelevant. I think gunpowder is another great example, as Saifedean outlines here. So we're going to watch this quick clip, these featured words from Saifedean. Again, this is not from of Saifedean comparing Bitcoin to another economic tool like gunpowder.
It's not optional. I mean, you will either move there or you will watch your wealth. It's not optional. I mean, you will either move there or you will watch your wealth lose its value as the people who put their money there appreciate. I mean, just think about it. If you have $1 million and you put them in a currency that's constantly depreciating, or somebody has $10,000 and puts them in a currency that's constantly appreciating, it's only a matter of time until they overtake you. And people are not stupid. They will realize this and they will want to move forward. So when I talk about Bitcoin adoption, people think of it as being like, say, Apple iPhone adoption. It's very nice and very cute, and then people will buy it. But I think that's not the model for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is more like gunpowder adoption. If you think about it, did the French army have a choice whether they should adopt gunpowder or not? Did they decide, no, you know what, we like to keep it real with sticks and stones and swords, and we're not going to use gunpowder? If any army that decided to do this, it didn't matter, because then another army with gunpowder would come and take over France. So eventually, everywhere in the world ended up with gunpowder, either because people adopted it or because it was used against them. And I think Bitcoin is like that. Bitcoin is like financial gunpowder. It's the safest way of sending money halfway around the world, the most secure way, and it's the hardest money that we've ever invented. So it's not something that is, whether we should or want to, or whether people, we try to win people over. And this, this is why my book is not marketing for Bitcoin, because I don't think marketing for Bitcoin matters. At the end of the day, this is economic reality. The harder money will win. Gold beats silver, and I discussed this in my book, not because there was better marketing for gold or there was better propaganda for gold. It beats silver because of economic reality. Gold grew at a much slower rate than silver. The value of silver declined, and I think this is really the case with Bitcoin. I think in the long run.
Yep, obviously I agree with that. And this is a little bit of the echo chamber where we all agree and we all wonder, are we wrong, right? Everyone says Bitcoin's gunpowder. Everyone says Bitcoin's inevitable. Everyone says that Bitcoin's going up indefinitely, right? And so, we all have our little echo chamber where we think that. But I think that what Donald Trump has just said, yesterday, what other politicians are also showing is that even if we're a little bit of an echo chamber for repeating these truisms of saying Bitcoin is gunpowder, I think it kind of proves the thesis, right? It's not necessarily that surprising. I am very surprised that Donald Trump is being this blatantly open to Bitcoin when a few years ago he was very clearly anti-Bitcoin, and now he's kind of warmed up to it. He's still not expressly pro it, but he's much more open to it than he was a few years ago. So my point is that I think these are the kinds of events that are happening that prove this idea that it's not just theory. It's not just, we can fantasize it and dream about it, but it's that, hey, we can look at the last 15 years of what's happened with Bitcoin. It's gone from being the Silk Road days with Ross Ulbricht, right, to this very tiny thing. So now it's this very large thing. They're ETFs, they're hedge funds, pension funds, and large billionaires and large billion-dollar corporations buying it, and now we have the politicians talking about in a favorable light. Many people, including myself, still think that the government could perhaps have many negative media campaigns against it. But at the end of the day, it is kind of like this gunpowder that if you don't adopt it and cater to the Bitcoin voters, well, then your other politicians are, right? Now, I don't think Joe Biden's going to anytime soon, but I think Donald Trump is seeing that, right? I may not understand Bitcoin. I may not like Bitcoin. I may not get Bitcoin. I might still think Bitcoin's a threat on the dollar, like Donald Trump has said he believes it is before. But I'm still going to pander to the Bitcoin voters because if I don't, then somebody else might. And even if Joe Biden might, well, and he won't, but even if it's not Joe Biden, Kennedy might. And Kennedy, in many ways, perhaps is the larger threat to Donald Trump at this point than Biden. And so I think it's very interesting to see this in real time, that it's this kind of gunpowder thesis in a very small way turning out. Now, of course, the much idea than these short, brief, positive words Donald Trump gave yesterday was the much bigger idea of what Kennedy said last summer when Kennedy proposed the idea of having U.S. treasuries, U.S. debt back to a certain degree by Bitcoin. I think that's a much bigger concept. I think that's a concept much farther out in the future than just merely buying votes like Donald Trump's trying to do right now. And I think that's where we get to this kind of multi-decamillion Bitcoin kind of idea, right? Basically, America's government can put bonds out of thin air. We back the bonds with things that we can confiscate or with things that we can own. By we, I mean the government, right? Meaning gold, meaning oil, meaning our Navy, meaning our guns, meaning our nuclear weapons, and probably including Bitcoin, probably including stock or other forms of equity that the Federal Reserve is probably going to own in the future, right? Janet Yellen and many others have discussed that the Federal Reserve might actually buy stock in the future. And so, lots of ways at which this could happen and many levers that could be pulled in the future. And I think one of the levers they will pull is backing our debt that we print out of thin air by things that take energy to produce, Bitcoin being one of them. So I think this gets to that larger idea that gunpowder is not optional, right? We can like gunpowder or not like gunpowder, and you can have your opinions on it and have your FUD against it. For now, your fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But on a long enough time horizon, there's nothing like an idea whose time has come, to quote Saylor, right? And so I think that in many ways is what we're looking at here. And now to transition to that, let's get to another Bitcoiner. Yeah, another controversial Bitcoiner, right? Controversy already, right? Donald Trump's pretty controversial. Ross Ulbricht is pretty controversial. Saifedean and Ammous is pretty controversial, but let's bring in some more, right? Let's bring in the spook, Jason Lowery, right? Everyone's favorite number go up spook of the Bitcoin world, right? Let's bring in Jason Lowery. What did you do this? Well, Jason Lowery still, according to him, cannot talk about Bitcoin due to service in the Space Force, right? Obviously, as many people watching this know, Jason Lowery publishes thesis, my Bitcoin thesis, soft war, like the 800 or 8 million page, I forget how many pages it was, but it was a very, very long thesis about Bitcoin. Very positive review. Well, again, mixed reviews, a lot of positive and negative reaction to the Bitcoin community. More leaning towards the positive view at my personal, anecdotal experience of how people reacted to it. But whatever the case, this is what he said today. Jason Lowery posted today that once we move past the fear of government banning, aka Bitcoin, and are comfortable calling it, aka Bitcoin, a weapon/defense system, the Second Amendment will come into play. But the real excitement begins when everyone simultaneously realizes its importance for national security. In parentheses, think $100 million per quote-unquote coin. Someone asked time frame, and Jason claims that most of us will live to see it. Now, that's quite the claim. To say $100 million Bitcoin just based on Second Amendment and viewing it as a weapon or whatever. And then, of course, I'm assuming this was in large part a reaction to the yesterday. But really, what is Jason getting at here? Well, I think Jason's actually getting at a very important point. Even if you don't like the guy, even if you disagree with him, I think that right now, most people are viewing Bitcoin as a financial asset, right? Most people view Bitcoin as digital gold. How large is gold? Well, it's about a $12 trillion market cap, right? Okay, Bitcoin's already about a tenth of the way there. So Bitcoin absorbing gold and becoming digital gold is only roughly a 10x from here. Now, I actually don't think it's a 10x. I actually think it's much more than a 10x just to get to gold. We'll get to that more later in the video, though. The large idea that Jason's talking about, though, I believe, is viewing Bitcoin like this form of gunpowder. It's not viewing Bitcoin as a competing form of digital gold. It's viewing Bitcoin as a form of national security, viewing Bitcoin as a form of defending property rights of the nations. We are currently in this ancient world where the majority of people don't live past 70 or 75 years old, right? Most people are not in the developed world like you or me, so most people don't have those long lifetimes. The majority of people in the world have gotten out of abject poverty, technically, over the last 50 years. Is the miracle of innovation, capitalism, and the free market, right? We are no longer in the world where the majority make less than $2 a day. But even though we're past that, we're still in a very ancient form of the world where 80%, 85% of those people of the world's adult population still don't have property rights. It's too expensive to get them bank accounts. It's too expensive for credit card companies to service them. It's very expensive for them to make international transfers, right? These are people in Africa. These are people in Southeast Asia. These are people in Eastern Europe, especially under the war right now. These are people in the Middle East, people in South America, Latin America, and Central America, even people in America. Many people who I've met that are trying to send money back to their families externally outside the United States, internationally. It's very expensive. So we are still in this ancient world where we have a global barter system between political currencies, right? I'm making this video on the internet right now. All of you wonderful people in the comments, hi everyone, are watching, on the internet right now, right? If we were to go back in time and near 30 or 40 years ago, the world we have 30 or 40 years ago is a kind of barter system between different forms of communication. Every country has its own mail system. Every country has its own, telegraph system, its own, its own individual communication systems. And now we're in this global world with one form of communication, that being the internet. And so if this kind of idea of Bitcoin, arbitrarily called a coin, is true, what Jason Lowery is getting at, whoops, just had a text message, ignore that, a text message from our global communications network. But my point is, in the same way that we have transitioned from many individual communications networks to one communication network being the internet, that whole idea of Bitcoin, and specifically what Jason Lowery is getting at, is that what if we could combine, instead of this ancient world where we have 100 different political currencies, and now we have one political currency, and additionally, instead of 100 different platforms, militaries, and armies to go and face off and shoot each other to death, what if instead we have one system of decreeing and determining who controls what amount of energy, right? Because that's basically what war is. War is essentially a way for nation states, aka groups of human beings, groups of people, to determine who gets to control what energy. And essentially, that's what Bitcoin is that here's the ledger, here's the blockchain, and it gives you irrefutable proof of who controls what amount of energy within the network. And that, I believe, is what Jason Lowery is getting at here. And that's why I believe he is talking about a $100 million Bitcoin. Important to me when it comes to Bitcoin. And, for especially those people watching the relatively new to Bitcoin, hopefully, this might sound like an extreme topic or claim at first, but I think the longer you think about the game theory, which is really what I'm trying to make the show about today, I think the more it makes sense. So this is a visual from Jason's book, or Jason's thesis about. So on the bottom left, we have blades and swords, shields. So I should clarify the X and Y axis. So the X axis is power projection capacity in watts on a log scale, and on the Y axis is power projection efficiency, also on a log scale. Now this is a power law, right? Log scale, right? Obviously this is a conceptual framework. This is not a literal one, but the point is being made here is that as technology innovates, as we have more energy that we're able to control at a more efficient ability over time, right? We go from open fire to candles to light bulbs, right? The same thing is true with weaponry, right? We go from swords and shields, we advance to cannons, right? Gunpowder, like we were just talking about a minute ago. We upgrade to infantry, right? Muskets. Then we go up to mechanical weaponry like tanks, grenades in World War I. We upgrade to warships, right? Then we upgrade to aerial bombardment. Of course, the tactical nuclear weapon, 1945, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, then since then, we're in the nuclear age, strategic nuclear weapons. And then Jason's theory is that the next step is one of two. Either we progress towards what he calls soft war, what most of us would just call hibernation, or the alternate route are what he describes as artificially intelligent killer drone swarms. And so basically here, the whole thing that Jason's getting at and why I believe Bitcoin is really important is because we're increasingly going to this exponentially more digital world, right? This is what everyone fears, right? CBDCs, total control, 2020, government lockdowns, this, that, the other. More and more centralization, more and more central control via more and more tyrannical, more and more violent, more and more overt means, right? More and more control. You have the drones that are terrifying, the facial recognition is terrifying, the AI that controls and manages everything, right? True 1984 Orwellian kind of world, right? And so then you have this other competing idea. Well, what if instead of going out and killing each other, or going out and imposing the threat of killing each other in the form of physical violence, what if instead people just settle energy disputes via Bitcoin, right? This is why his book has a set of antlers on it, right? Because why do deer have antlers? They have antlers so they can settle territory and mating disputes without the need to kill each other. Because without that, then their only option is to kill each other, right? This is why, other animals have vibrant colors, right? This is why snakes have colors on their bodies to alert people that, hey, I'm poisonous, or this is why poison dart frogs have colors to alert, hey, I'm poisonous, right? This is why bees have certain pheromones and they have coloring on themselves to alert the world that, hey, I am projecting power, I am projecting my threat, my threatening capacity without having to resort to my actual true weaponry, right? In the same way that bees have stripes so that you don't have to resort to stingers, in the same way that deer have antlers so they don't have to resort to actually killing each other. The whole idea, the whole thesis that Jason talks about is, what if Bitcoin is the thing that we can use to avert the need for killing each other and the first monetize it or disincentivize it, right? And this is why Jason's talking about $100 million Bitcoin, and this is why I'm mentioning Jason's tweet today, because I think game theory is why Donald Trump is talking about. I think ultimately, if you go down the rabbit hole enough, you realize that Bitcoin is this kind of endpoint for states competing with each other, right? At first, Bitcoin is the thing the governments don't care about. Then eventually it becomes what the politicians care about in order to their voter base to elect them this upcoming cycle. And eventually it gets to the point where governments realize that we need to mine Bitcoin faster than the other guys. We need our oil to be converted to Bitcoin, right? We don't want to use dollars to sell our oil. We want Bitcoin. Why do we want Bitcoin? Because no government controls Bitcoin. No human being controls Bitcoin. That's the whole purpose of Bitcoin. That's the whole point of Bitcoin. Now, that sounds crazy, and that sounded crazy to me at one point too, but this gets back to the whole idea I often talk about with how we have less in common technologically with the near future than the distant past, right? And this is another comment that Jason made. If World War III were a soft war, as in non-kinetic war, fought in, from, and through cyberspace, as World War III. And this is why I talk about Bitcoin, because I believe Bitcoin is the best hope we have of the future. It's the best hope we have of avoiding having your money censored, avoiding the stimulus checks being your only means of eating this week. It's the way to avoid the government censorship, to avoid the government controls, the way to encourage politicians to go the more moral route, the more ethical route, and the more universally accepted route, instead of the increasingly centralized route, because of game theory, because of simple economics, right? You cannot like gunpowder. It doesn't change the fact you're going to have to adopt it, right? You cannot like Bitcoin. It doesn't change the fact that you're going to have to demonetize your military to go there, right? We're not going to fix the problem of CBDCs by having a political solution. We're not going to decrease the probability of World War III in a kinetic form by having stronger politics. You only can decrease the probability of World War III in a kinetic form by introducing a separate system that doesn't require kinetic violence in order to survive, and that is Bitcoin, right? And so to give a little more perspective on what exactly is being talked about here, I've got one more clip to show in today's live stream, and this one is from Jason Lowery talking about this exact thing. This is taken out of context here. This is a 2.5 hour long podcast by my friend Peter McCormick on what Bitcoin did. So it's going to be a little out of context, but I still think it gets to the point very appropriately here.
You're excluding yourself from a whole bunch of different server requests, spams, email requests, whatever. You're just saying none. I don't accept any of those except for the ones that stamped with a proof of work.
Okay. So you basically saying you have to be like the Bitcoin is the most trusted protocol to do this. So you have to be part of Bitcoin to start having benefits of these services.
Yes.
Right.
Why in this world does more Bitcoin mean more power?
Because you can, like, if you say you can't send me an email unless it's collateralized by a SAT, you've imposed a physical cost using power. Mm-hmm. Like it's
buying the physical cost. Yep. I get the physical cost.
Okay. But now you can only send me as many control actions or server requests or emails as you have Bitcoin. So you are physically, logically, and financially constrained from attacking me.
Hold on. So the financial constraint is having the Bitcoin to do it. The physical constraint is being part of the protocol using Bitcoin.
The financial constraint is the value of the collateralized sats that you use. You lose that value.
Yeah.
Your net worth has now decreased slightly. The cost is all the watts that's required to do it.
Yeah, but I don't need any watts. That's other people doing that.
Yeah, they're doing it on your behalf, but you're paying them for that service, just like you pay people to secure your property.
In that I'm paying the transaction fee.
Yeah, to the miners.
And you're
Okay.
also accepting a little small exponentially decreasing amount of debasement because of the exponentially decreasing block subsidy.
Okay, I think I'm there. So
We still haven't talked about why. Why
yeah,
would we frame it?
Yeah,
Okay.
so why frame it like this?
Yeah.
Is it? Sorry, dropped my pen. Is it back to my recent film I made with Troy Cross? He thinks the U.S. government is on the verge of making a huge mistake with Bitcoin.
So we can describe software using any metaphor that we want.
Yep.
Based off of intended functionality, potential use cases, and ability to explain it to other people. So again, I'm this military officer at school.
Spook.
and my job is to explain the national strategic security implications to my bosses.
Yep.
Up to the Joint Chiefs. So like General Brown himself green-lighted this. Okay. So how do I explain the value of this Bitcoin thing to that audience in a way that they understand? Okay. In a way that will orange pill them. They understand the difference between Bitcoin and shitcoin.
Mhm.
They understand the difference between proof of work and proof of stake, or they at least can recognize that there is no substitute. There is no second place proof of work network to Bitcoin. Okay. How do I orange pill them using words and metaphors that they understand the best? And at the same time, how do I also simultaneously, I got to find a careful way of saying this since I am, how do I find a way to make it so that it is clear that the Department of Treasury and the Federal Reserve are not qualified to be talking about the national strategic implications of Bitcoin?
See, this is really interesting. So this is where me and Danny were talking about it.
Yeah. So the point of me showing that clip and the point of me talking about it is because ultimately I'm trying to get at a larger point here. The larger point is that Bitcoin is way bigger, is a far bigger deal than I think we're prepared to admit. I think it's a far bigger deal than what people understand. Okay. Most people view Bitcoin as something that the Treasury and the Fed should comment on. People view Bitcoin as something separate from politics. But what Donald Trump yesterday speaking about it so publicly and clearly changing his opinion on it in the last 3 or 4 years has shown is that it is becoming a political issue. And then I think the next step is that once it truly, right now it's a fringe political issue, but it's going to become a mainstream political issue. And then beyond that is that it's going to supersede the politics in of itself to where it becomes a bigger deal than the politics. And so I have this little visual here to kind of give context. So we have these 4 bars here. So on the left, we have Bitcoin. Like, what is Bitcoin today? Think that, Bitcoin could go up by a factor of 10 or a factor of 50 or a factor of 100 if it absorbs, 10% of the bond market, or if it absorbs gold as the new digital store value, right? People look at Bitcoin from within our current lens, from within our current frame, and we say, oh, wow, Bitcoin could go up by a factor of 100. But what I think most people are missing is that we should not be thinking of the technologies of the future from within our frame of today. We should be looking at the technologies of the future from within the frame of tomorrow, right? So, let's take this, bar chart, visual example, and again, use that with the phone. And we were talking about the internet, like, hey, I think the internet's going to be a big deal, right? You should, buy your share of the internet, right? When you can, right? You should use this, right? How do you describe to somebody how valuable the internet's going to be? Do you use it in terms of the telegraph? Do you use it in terms of rotary phones? Do you use it in terms of radio? Like, how do you describe the value of the internet 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now in terms of these former technologies the internet should not be compared to, right? Most of us have smartphones, right? We have smartphones, and in our smartphone, we can type in literally any address in the world and get directions to it. We can find out where the closest restaurants to it are. We can find out the reviews to those restaurants. We can find out everything about anywhere in the world just from the tap of a button, right? I mean, how do I price the value of this smartphone in terms of physical maps, right? Like, how do you do that? How can you possibly do that? And that's just one application. Forget the calculator, forget everything else on the internet, forget the fact that you can watch my live streams or anyone's live streams, on this device, right? The point is, one digital map is worth literally millions, billions, and trillions of analog maps, of physical maps, right? That's how much more valuable this future technology is in terms of the former one, right? And so when most people look at Bitcoin and they're trying to price it, I believe they're trying to price it in terms of the telegraph. They're trying to price it in terms of these former technologies, right? And so that's the question I'm posing today, that I think Donald Trump making these comments about Bitcoin is cool, important, yeah, whatever. Again, do I trust him? No. Is he a hypocrite for being pro CBDC in action in 2020, expressively, even way more than Barack Obama? Yeah, he is. Okay, but that doesn't change the fact that Bitcoin is changing the politics faster than the politics is changing Bitcoin, right? And if Bitcoin, at this tiny, tiny market cap it is today, with this tiny number of users that it is today, is having that big of implications on mainstream legacy politicians in the most powerful country on the planet, that's the question I pose to you today. What if Bitcoin is a way bigger idea that we can understand? What if that blue bar that we're looking at is the entire current world's assets, right? Everyone talks about, oh, Bitcoin could go to $100 million if it absorbs, X percent of the $900 trillion or the $400 trillion or whatever $100 trillion of today's money, right? And my question is, Bitcoin expands the world's economic output? What if Bitcoin expands the world's GDP? Bitcoin expands the world's productivity and abundance and affluence in ways that we can't even possibly understand. Again, 80 to 85% of the world's 5.3 billion adults around the planet do not have monetary rights. Okay, is it logical to assume that Bitcoin is only going to go to hundreds of millions of dollars when it absorbs only a portion of this current ancient world's economy? What happens when we literally, in a couple decades, have 5 to 10 times the number of human beings contributing to the world's economy, and probably doing it at least twice as don't have these kinds of inefficient bureaucracies and taxes and political currencies weighing us down? So what happens when you double the average person's productivity by eliminating political currency red tape, and you increase the number of productive humans by a factor of 4 or 5, and you interject artificial intelligence? Well, all of a sudden, you're no longer looking at that Orwellian 1984 world where AI is a tool to reinforce the centralizing agencies of government. And now AI is a decentralized tool to assess people and having more and more productivity, right? So if you have 5 times the number of people with twice their productivity from lack of bureaucracy, means the capacity via these AIs and via future innovations that we can't possibly understand. And Bitcoin trying to price all of that in within 21 million coins. Why Bitcoin is a way that we can understand. Okay, now what is the current price of Bitcoin? Obviously, the current price of Bitcoin in dollars, main what we care about, right? It's down by roughly about 1% today. 8/10 of a percent today is $68,000, $68,740 at the time of recording. In nominal terms, it's a little cheaper. In euros, obviously all these in real terms are the exact same, but in nominal terms, the euro is a little cheaper, and the yen, it's way more expensive, and in yuan, it's way more expensive, right? Why these 4 currencies? These are the 4 major central banks of the world, right? People tell me, oh, Luke, Bitcoin's never going to 100 million currency units per Bitcoin. Well, the yen right here obviously is already 10 million, right? Obviously in real terms it's the same, but my point is in nominal terms, there is no top to Bitcoin. There's no end to how high it could go. Now, if Bitcoin went to $100 million, as in dollars, US political currency units, that would be an increase of 1,470x per Bitcoin. Now, obviously, is that anytime soon? No, obviously not. I'm not claiming it's going to. But the important point is that if we have a time horizon of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, whether it's for us, if you're young like me, for us in our own lifetimes, or if it's for your children or your great-grandchildren, whatever the case, you should have a timeline of multiple decades. And if you have that timeline of multiple decades, you should be thinking about Bitcoin, again, from that future reference. And in that future reference, Bitcoin probably is going to be worth millions, if not tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in that future. I believe those are the only 2 possible futures. Either we continue to accelerate towards kinetic war, or Bitcoin is a sly roundabout way to divert politicians, to divert culture, to divert economies away from this kinetic war to this kind of soft war, this kind of digital war that does not result to war, that results in killing, right? This is essentially what Nikola Tesla predicted way back in 1899. Eventually, technology would get to this point that the only way we could settle these energy disputes was by digital nature and not analog nature. And that's why I think Donald Trump about this today is really important. And I think that's why what Saifedean has to say about gunpowder, as well as Justin Lowery has had to say in the past, I think is really applicable. Obviously, you probably want to buy more Bitcoin. Thank you for watching today's show. And if you want to buy more Bitcoin, you should consider River. Thank you to River for being one of my sponsors and friends over the last year or so making content. There's a link in the description below underneath this video, underneath this live stream, where you can buy Bitcoin. I really recommend River because they have full reserve of their Bitcoin. That does not mean you should trust your Bitcoin on any exchange, including their exchange, but I would trust my Bitcoin on River exchange way before I would trust Coinbase, because River has one-to-one reserves in their own individual self-custody. And additionally, also, in my opinion, more important is that they have actual phone service, right? If you use the link in the description below, you get white glove phone service for U.S. customers where you can actually talk to a person, okay? I cannot tell you how many times anecdotally I've talked to people that, reach out to Coinbase, reach out to Gemini, reach out to whatever exchange they use. Back, right? Oh, they'll get back to them in 2 weeks. Or, submit a support ticket, right? I mean, come on. You want phone service. You want a quality exchange that's going to care about you as much as you care about your Bitcoin. So my encouragement is, as always, get your Bitcoin off exchange. 3 different exchanges you're buying Bitcoin on, and River is one that I recommend. Again, that link's in the description. This was one of my first live streams I've done. If you like this kind of different vibe, this kind of different presentation, please subscribe. I know, and I'm sure there were technical difficulties. I'm going to review it after doing a show and see what I got wrong, see how I can improve. If you want me to continue doing these, please subscribe, please like the video, please share it with your friends. It really helps me out. And importantly, it's going to help me make more content in the coming months and year or so that hopefully is going to help orange pill your family and friends. So if you want a place to see your family and friends a year from now, when they finally start caring about Bitcoin, please subscribe, like the video, comment, share, do all that wonderful stuff so I can keep double downing and keep making more content so that hopefully when your family and friends need a place to go to find bullish hopium for Bitcoin without the noise and without the chaos of the trading and the altcoins and all that stuff, please like and subscribe for the video. And also a quick pre-announcement at the end of the video. I'm having it at the very end of the video because this is not done yet, but a lot of people have asked me to make some sort of community for that exact reason. A lot of people have family members, friends, or other people that they want to send them to a high-quality place where they get accurate signal about Bitcoin, and so that's why I'm starting a little kind of community. Okay, to be clear, this is not a trading community. This is not a indicator community. No, the purpose of this community is get high-quality content, have live streams with myself and lots of other guests I'm going to invite to the community, as well as have in-person, in real-life events. So if that's something that's interest to you, it's still in the works. It's still not fully set up yet, but for my supportive subscribers that are watching this all the way to the end, thank you for being one of them, watching this all the way to the end, and being here at the early stages or mid-stages bull market. But if that interests you, link in the description below for that little community. Again, there are going to be exclusive live streams within that community coming up in coming weeks, and those will be very frequent, ongoing. Of course, all my slides, access slides, as well as exclusive content. I'm going to be making a few exclusive pieces for that community as a thanks to them. Of course, there's a 24/7 chat where you can talk to me and the other people that I'm going to be inviting into that community. Resources as well, resources against FUD. Basically, people that join the community, I want them to have high-quality stuff that they can send to their family and friends to help orange pill them, right? And so, again, this is the pre-release. I'll raise the price probably this upcoming Monday when I actually announce it and post it. So if you want the best price, just check it out now. Links in the description. I'm really not good at marketing these things. But one last thing too is that upcoming in this August, there's going to be a event in Michigan where there's a lot of people from El Salvador. Ross Ulbricht's mom is probably going to be there. At least that's the plan for now. She's probably going to be there, as well as other people from the Silk Road days, Curtis Green, and many other people. So if you want to get to know Ross's family and his friends, that have endured with him, I've met his brother once or twice. I don't remember, but anyway. So and also separate from the Silk Road days, could be lots of other Bitcoiners there. So that's an in-person event in Michigan. If you want information on how to join that event, you can click the link in the description below. That's a part of why I'm making this little community, is so that at various events, retreats, think tanks, festivals, whatever, information can be sent to that, and tickets are sold or tickets are given to people in that community. So basically we can have real life friends, right? A lot of people ask me, where can I network people in real life? And the hope is that, hey, community members, here's an event going on that we're throwing on for you. Join that. So if that event sounds interesting to you, if you want the exclusive content, live streams, check that link out in the description below. Again, I'm not really marketing that yet because it's not ready yet. But anyway, thank you for your support. Hope this was interesting, a different kind of style. I'm probably going to be experimenting with more in the future, especially as we get into more bull market territory. So until next time, thank you. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that wonderful stuff. Appreciate it.